Now the Conservatives pledged ahead of the election that you're going to work to cut red tape. What exactly is it that you're going to do?
Well, today we're announcing exactly what we pledged to do, which is an industry-led task force chaired by Richard McDonald, former Director General of the NFU, and their job is threefold. It's to look at all the regulations affecting the farming and the food industry to see whether there's any we can get rid of altogether. The second thing, to see whether there's any what we call gold plating, any bits of them that we can get rid of. But third, and by far the most important element, is to actually shift the whole process of how we implement and enforce regulations away from process, filling in forms, tick boxes, records, to actually trusting farmers to deliver the basic objective of the regulations. So we shift from process to outcomes by trusting farmers to do what is right for their farm, their circumstances, etc. And at the same time we want to change the inspection regime so that farmers have already proved that it can be trusted through being members of an assurance scheme or something like that. We'll get less statutory inspections. This is all about expecting, as we know, farmers to do the right thing most of the time and concentrate our efforts on risk assessment to deal with the small minority who don't always comply with the rules.
So it's about cutting red tape for farmers. Is it also about saving them money? Is that the plan?
Well, in as much as time is money, yes. Whether it will actually save literally cash laid out, I can't tell you, but the objective is to save a huge amount of time. Farmers, for years, rightly been complaining about the burden of regulation. But ministers of all parties have always promised bonfire regulation, but it never happens. And the reason is because most regulations have a sensible purpose. The real burden to the business is not achieving that, it's doing all the process, it's filling in the forms, the tick boxes, it's reading books and books of guidance. That's where all the time is taken up, and if we can get rid of that time, yes, we are saving money.
Which areas have been gold plated then and could actually be cut back quite a lot?
Well, there's many of them, but I'll give you a couple of examples in the last few years. Remember when we first went over to the single farm payment system, every farmer was required to keep their land in good agricultural and environmental condition. At the time they received, and I was one of them, 3 books of guidance about how to do that, but actually the European regulation had 12 lines to it, and that's a marvellous example of gold plating, if you like. The second example I'd give you is the nitrate vulnerable zones regulations, where we've actually got now laid down in statute the day that farmers can go muck spreading. I've called it National Muck Spreading Day. But it's crazy, because actually what matters is the conditions on your farm at that particular time of year, the weather, whether it's dry or wet, whether you're on a flat ground or on a hill, all those things. We should rely on the farmers to make the judgment, because what really matters is not when they spread their muck. What matters is the level of nitrates in their watercourses, and that's what we should be judging on.
Now Richard's going to be working, it's an independent team.
Totally independent to advise me.
Are you pledging that you'll act on what he says?
I can go so far as to say I will take a lot of convincing not to act on his recommendations. It is only to advise, and at the end of the day, ministers have to decide. So without knowing what he's going to say, I cannot give you that blanket promise. But I hope my credibility in the industry is suffice to say that I really want this to work.